And I was involved with the Unification Church, better known as the Moonies, in the 70s. And after 2.5 years being a leader in the group, I dropped out of college, I quit my job, I donated my bank account, and recruiting lots of people into the group, I fell asleep at the wheel of a van and nearly died. My family did an intervention, and I came to understand that in fact, brainwashing does exist, mind control, and have spent the last 36 years helping people get out of all kinds of destructive, controlling situations. And Ronnie, why don't you say a bit about yourself?
My name is Ron Ramos. I was formerly missionary Ron from the Church of God. I was 12 years in that church, which has a lot of characteristics that resembles a cult. I'm not saying it is a cult, but it has a lot of characteristics of when I researched about cults through freedom of mind and the Bite model. It kind of mirrors a lot of that. So that's why I'm here discussing that today too. I've been out now for about a year. I got out at November of 2011. I met up with Steve, and after speaking with Steve and looking on his website and doing some research on my own, I decided now is the time to help others also to understand what's going on in this Church of God, this church that exists right now.
And so the organization is the World Mission Society Church of God, not the Church of God. And talk a little bit about the leadership. Who's the big guy? In my group, it was a guy named Sun Myung Moon. This is a cover jacket of a book about Sun Myung Moon, and he's dressed up during one of the mass weddings where he would tell thousands of people, men and women, you're going to marry you, you're going to marry you. And people would have 5 minutes to decide if they were going to marry each other. But, since he was Father Moon, pretty much people did what they believed God wanted them to do. So was it An Sung Hang was the analogous leader of your group? Could you say a little bit about it?
Sure. I apologize about the name, the Church of God. There's just been so many names to this church. It was An Sung Hang Witnesses. There's 3 or 4 different names. But yeah, it is the World Mission Society Church of God. Their leader is An Sung Hong, he died in 1985. At first, when I first came into that church, I didn't know about Second Coming Christ. When we were baptized, we never learned about An Sung Hong. We just learned about the Passover, and then later on, after receiving X amount of studies, then we would hear that An Sung Hong, who established this church, is the Second Coming of Christ. By then, you don't really question it because you think that everything else you heard made sense, so that must make sense too.
So can I interrupt you, Ron, and just say that you're describing a very systematic pattern of destructive cults, unlike legitimate religious groups that are transparent and accountable and responsible and actually tell people up front who they are and what they believe and what to expect upon membership. Destructive organizations deliberately withhold information, distort information, change information, and it's kind of, when I was in the Moonies, we were told, because the world is filled with Satan, you can't afford to tell people that Father is the Messiah, so you have to spoon feed them, and we were literally told you couldn't feed an infant steak, they would die on it, you have to feed them formula. And so we would think of the analogy that adults that we were recruiting, trying to be fruitful, to bring them in, were spiritual babies, and therefore it was justified, the ends justified the means, to use deception. But in fact, they're violating our religious freedom and our civil rights to make an informed consent, to say, yes, we want to learn more about this group. Yes, we want to know what we're getting baptized into, as opposed to a whole systematic influence or undue influence scheme where they break you down, they disorient you, through controlling people's behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions. I refer to it as the BITE model, which is, by the way, on my freedomofmind.com website or in my books. They deliberately break people down, disorient them, spoon-feed them incrementally what the teachings are, shape their behavior, control sleep, control diet, start to isolate people from family and friends who may be questioning, install phobias in people's minds to make them afraid that if they question the group or even have a